We are now recording, so welcome to this session of the PMP Exam Prep Exam Information with me. I'm Barb Waters, and you have Orlando Sequera, and we're here to help you understand this exam a little bit better. Orlando, would you like to introduce yourself, say a little bit about what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you
Great.
very much, Barb, for the opportunity.
Sure.
I really enjoy these sessions a lot. It's a way to provide some initial information that is useful. Hopefully, you guys can get a lot of useful information if you're going to be taking the exam in the near future, which I would recommend you to do it. And well, a little bit about me. I'm a project manager. I've been doing project management for over 15 years now. Work in different industries. Healthcare, IT, mostly software development, and lately, excuse me, lately working on the aerospace industry. So developing software for the Artemis program that NASA is trying to send to the moon. We're going to be sending the first woman and the next man to the moon in the next 4 years. So, but I'm also an instructor, a project management instructor. This is what I enjoy the most, to be able to um, get to know you as a student, share my experience, and help you in that journey of becoming a certified project manager as a PMP. So hopefully we can benefit your knowledge with this session.
All right. And I'm Barb, and I am a full-time PMP and PMI ACP. That's the Agile certification. I'm a full-time instructor for Skillsoft. And Skillsoft is the learning provider of choice for about 65% of the Fortune 500. But with Orlando and this partnership with Skillsoft, we're actually able to provide training to individuals and small organizations. And so this is, like Orlando said, I love this part of my job. I love doing this and bringing some information to you so that we can help grow this profession and welcome more PMPs to into the fold. So thank you so much for joining us. And what we're going to do, we have a little slide deck to cover with you, and then of course please feel free at any time to jump in with your questions. So, and for those of you who are watching this on replay, we'll have some contact information for you as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. And Orlando, would you like to take the first one?
Yes, absolutely. So
Okay,
thank you, Barb.
sure.
This this is what we're going to be covering. This is about the PMP exam preparation. So the main textbook for this class is, for this exam actually, is the PMBOK 6th edition, the Project Management Body of Knowledge by PMI. Um, a little bit of information about the certification. This is the #1 non-technical certification, and it has been the case for several years now. So it really adds value. It's not industry specific. You can, by definition, manage projects in any industry if you have your PMP. It is globally recognized and demanded. There's some legislation here in the US for the federal government that is recommending government entities at the federal level to have in their staff certified project managers. And the way it works here is that the private sector follows the same approach. So it's definitely going to become more than a nice to have. It's becoming a requirement more and more. And I'm sure that that's going to trickle down to other countries as well. And 80% of high performing projects use a credentialed project manager. That is truly the case. This shows that you master a framework that allows you to apply um, this knowledge in a repeatable way to be able to efficiently manage the resources that you have and the triple constraint, which is the core of the profession.
Yeah, excellent. And just a little bit about the qualifications, the prerequisites for for this certification. So you need to have a bachelor's degree or equivalent along with 4,500 hours managing projects. Now, if you don't have a bachelor's degree, that's okay too. You just need to offset the hours with more project management experience. And then you do need to have the 3 years or 5 years of experience, depending on your level of education, and then 35 hours of project management education. And so the Skillsoft content does provide you 35 hours of 35 contact hours through a registered education provider. And that's important to ask if you're going through any kind of training, whether that provider is actually an REP is what they call it. Now, if you don't have the qualifications for the PMP, the Certified Associate in Project Management is an alternative. If you do have the PMP, we do recommend that training. That would be the one that more employers are looking for. But it doesn't matter which one you're going for. The education process is actually the same. So that's a little bit about the background and the certification requirements, the prerequisites. And
Great.
yeah.
So this is a very important piece of information. PMP exam is changing soon. July 1st, 2020, this is going to change. This is a major overhaul of the exam that we haven't seen in a few years. There's going to be a new exam content outline for the exam. The 5 domains that are tested right now are changing to 3. It's going from the process groups, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing, is changing to people, process, and business environment. So there's several changes, and the main recommendation that we can give you as a trainer is to get started with your preparation as soon as possible, because you have to take into consideration that if for whatever reason you have to postpone the date, you have a constraint already. You have to do it before July 1st. Otherwise, with this change, if you take the exam after July 1st, you're going to be tested on the new exam outline, meaning that this preparation is going to change. It's not going to help you. So you'll have to wait and basically start from scratch. So this is really important. My advice will be start with the preparation as soon as possible. Leave some time for retake if you have to, so you are able to become a PMP before July 1st.
Yeah, very important. And the steps, we'll go through these one at a time. So this is what you would do in order if you're going through the process of your application. So I'm going to start with the application. And we do recommend that you do this now. In fact, if you're studying and you think, oh, I'll study first, then I'll apply, these are things that you could actually be doing at the same time. So submitting the application and studying is something you really want to kind of do simultaneously. Create your own account. There's no charge to do that on pmi.org. There's no cost for the application process. And that's great. It used to be a little different, if I could remember. I feel like you used to have to pay before you knew if it was accepted, but a while back they changed that. So this is nice. It's risk-free to go ahead and start your application, initiate that. You do have 90 days to submit it, but we're under the time crunch a little bit. So my recommendation is to give yourself about a week to just have your resume in front of you, have all of your job experience right there to refer to, and go ahead and just submit that application. Now, Orlando and I will give you some information tonight about how you might want to structure your job experience and talk about that. But for now, just know go ahead and get that started. PMI will take about 5 to 10 days to review the application. It could take you up to 8 hours to populate. I have not really heard it take that long. If you're prepared and you have all of your information in front of you, it shouldn't take that long. You will need to document your prior project experience and have contact information from your supervisors. So our advice, or my advice, would be to start with the most recent work first and then work your way backward. It's easier to recall the work you did. And once you hit the number of hours that you need to have, it'll gray out and you'll be done. So you don't want to start back in 2015. If you have work that's relevant now, go ahead and work your way backward as you submit your application.
All right. So part of the application process, and this is something that you should take the time and try to work with an instructor that will help you in filling out the application, because the goal should be to try to avoid an application audit. It is a random process that PMI performs, but there's a possibility, you have to know that there's a possibility that your application might be audited. And what it means is that you're going to have to submit evidence of the information that you provided. That's why it's important when you fill out the application to get in touch with the people that you're listing as your supervisor for the projects that you're filling out the information about. So you have to get in touch. You should get in touch with them to let them know that you're doing this, and you should treat it like when you apply for a job. So you might be asked to provide the references. That's basically what you're going to be doing. But it could be a setback. It's going to be some time to put the package together. So you have to allocate some time for that. If that contingency happens, then you're able to do it and not get off track with your with your application, with your preparation. I myself, I went through an audit. PMI has a great customer service department. They will help. Any questions, you can get in touch with them directly, and they'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. But you have to be aware of the fact that there's a possibility that your application might get audited. So
Yeah.
very important.
And just to add a little bit about your work experience, there is such a limited number of characters. I think it's only 550 characters that you have to explain your
Yes.
your whole job, the whole project. It's tough. So my recommendation is to have Word open and just go ahead and type it. Keep checking your word count. And the best thing you can do, and I've heard of a few audits lately where they're being kicked back because the person was too focused on their um, their industry. So for instance, if it was Orlando's application, he would be talking about all about the rocket and the specifications and all of that. And it just wasn't focused enough on project management. So
Correct.
that's what they're going to look for. You need to be very focused on the project and explain it in order from initiating through closing, just the way the domains of the exam are. And so there are 5 domains. If you've already begun studying, you know that. And go ahead and word your experience in that order. That should help a little bit. Okay. And then, oh, sorry, Orlando, you want to
No,
take
no,
this
no.
one?
No, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's
No,
good.
no, I was talking a lot. So you do have a year after your application is approved, either after your first application or after you've done the audit. Then that 1 year begins. You can take the exam up to 3 times during the year, but keep in mind that really for you, it's by June 30th. Because otherwise, like Orlando said, the studies aren't really worthwhile. This new exam isn't going to be close enough to the current exam to say, well, I just need to study a couple changes. Not this
No,
time. It's
not
going
this
to be
time.
pretty significant. So keep in mind, you can take that exam up to 3 times, but your timeline is shortened. And a question in the chat: is it okay to mention industry-specific terms in your experience statement? Absolutely. The first sentence of the statement should be the objective of the project. So start with the objective of the project. So as a project manager or as a member of the PMO, whatever, what was your role? I worked on this project, whatever the name of it was, and then what was the purpose. And if you do that for your opening statement, the rest of it, you don't have to be all that specific to the industry. You'll notice that you run out of words very quickly with
Yes.
the 550 characters. Yeah.
So, and great question. And to add
Yeah.
to Barb's answer, uh, like she mentioned before, most people that is the most common pitfall in the application, and that triggers an audit.
Yeah.
By all means, people tend to focus, and I've seen that in many cases, working with students. And what I do for is that we do a pre-audit, and that's one of the things that we look for. If you start working, it's a rabbit hole, right? You start talking about your project and what you did, but you get caught up in the technical aspects of the scope of the project. But what PMI is really looking for is how much project management you apply. Did you identify your stakeholders? Did you create the project charter? And you should do it in a way that is aligned with the 5 domains. You don't have to have hours in every single domain, in every single project, but you have to use the terminology, you have to use the right vocabulary to express what you did as a project manager. Remember that the we're not the subject matter experts that are working. That's not our role. That's not our capacity. We are adding value to the team from a different capacity. That's what PMI is looking for. How much of that project management experience do you actually apply to your projects? So that's a really good question. Hopefully
Yeah.
that helps with the answer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. An add-on to that question is, what if it's an uncommon term? Do I have to briefly explain what the term means? You won't have an opportunity. You won't have enough words to do
Um,
that. And so, if it's something that's tricky, um, you're going to have to
I
try to.
will,
Mhm.
yeah. What I would say is to stick. You should say what the objective of the project is and limit that information to sentence only, one sentence only. That's it. The
Yeah.
project might be building a house, and well, that's kind of simple. Or building a rocket to go back to the moon. That's a really complex project. Not many projects are more complex than that. I can tell you that building the Orion spacecraft that Lockheed Martin is building. But that's it. One liner for the objective of the project. But after that, what you explain of your experience should be your real estate is very limited, so should be only the specific tasks aligned with project management, not about the technical aspect of the project. Even if you did some of that, you should focus on the ones that you did related to the framework, related to project management per se. So there's a way of doing that. Of course, it is a deeper conversation, but that's where an instructor could add value to help you and mentor you on how to fill that application properly, because that's where most people have problems with. So
Yeah, I would say try to avoid any terminology that gets too specific, and act like you're taking a friend, you're going to lunch with a friend, and they ask what you do. What do you do for your job? And you know that your friend is not within your industry, and you have to break this down in a way that they can understand it. But you have to pretend you have only one sentence to do it.
a
So
tweet, or think of a
a
tweet,
tweet, that's perfect. There you go. Yeah. And
Mhm.
it's okay to stay non-technical. I think a lot of us think we're going into this really intimidating exam and we need to impress the person who's going to read our application and make them feel like we're legitimate, like yes, I'm a project manager. And in fact, that can actually turn around
Backfire.
on you. It could be a problem. You need to be very just understandable to the average person who you would be explaining it to. So yeah, you can impress them on exam day. That's where they're going to really expect you to know all about the terms and everything like that, but project management terms, like Orlando said. Okay. So is this my slide? No, this is you, Orlando.
Okay. All
Sorry.
right. Payment. No, not a problem. You have to submit the payment via PMI.org. They are going to handle that directly. That's part of the application process, actually. You're not going to be able to schedule your exam before uh, they receive the payment. That's when they let you go move forward with the application. Then there's going to be a link to the testing center, which is Pearson View. That's how you're going to be able to provide to schedule your exam. Um, PMI member exams are they have a discount. If you're a member of PMI, it's going to cost you $405. And if you join PMI, in average, it's going to cost you $130, $140, depending on the chapter, local chapter that you join to. Um, the exam fee for a non-member is going to be higher. It's going to be $555. Re-examination, if for whatever reason you have to retake the exam, is going to cost you $275. If you're not a member of PMI, it's higher, it's $375. Also, there we strongly recommend you to join PMI because you not only have the discount for the exam, you also get a lot of benefits. You're going to have access to the network of resources that PMI has in place. For example, projectmanagement.com. There's a ton of templates in there, a ton of information, even webinars that you can attend or watch the recorded webinars that in several topics. You have white paper, access to white papers, journals, and also access to a community of project managers. So there's a lot of added value in joining PMI. We strongly recommend you to join PMI. It's the organization providing the certification, and there's a lot of added value with becoming part of PMI. So that's our recommendation. Join PMI. That's actually a way to save for the exam and also to be successful.
Yeah. All right. So, scheduling the exam, that is through the authorized testing center is called Pearson View, and they are located globally. And the testing centers, I'm starting to hear that they're beginning to get a little bit busier, and we're not surprised to hear that because with the exam changing in June, in really June 30th,
Yes.
there we're starting to see some sense of urgency. And so that's why we're recommending to finish everything and get scheduled in April if you can, because May, June, especially June, it could be hard to get a seat, and that would be a shame. We don't really want to have that extra stress in addition to a test that's already challenging. The last thing you need is added stress on exam day or around the exam. So it would be helpful. That's why we're saying start that application now. Go ahead and get your exam date, get that scheduled, and then use your time to study wisely. We recommend, well, I don't know, Orlando, I recommend somewhere around 45 to 60 days from the first day you begin to actually sitting for the exam. 30, I always think is too short because that's cramming, and anything more than 60, every day that you learn something, you lose something because it's just too long to try to keep all that information in your head. Um,
Yeah, between it's pretty much what we say 6 to 8 weeks from beginning to
yeah,
end. So
yeah.
that's it shouldn't go um, any longer than that.
Hmm.
That is a recommendation. So pretty much
Yeah.
aligned.
So you'll get this authorization letter from PMI, and that's what you bring with you to the testing center. It's important to understand the details of the testing center, the address, not just the street address, but also if there's a suite number or sometimes it'll be in a big office complex and you need to know precisely where you're headed. And Again, you don't want to be running late on exam day, so know where you're headed, the hours of operation. You do need to bring 2 forms of photo ID, and you don't bring anything into the testing room with you. Anything you need will be given to you, so a calculator, paper. We'll talk about that in a moment, but for right now, we're just talking about scheduling the exam, knowing what to expect, and just being prepared for exam day and getting there on time. Um,
And
all
before
right.
we move to the next slide, I wanted to add something about the scheduling the exam, which is we also recommend our students to schedule the exam as early as possible because it's another motivating factor. It's extra motivation for you because as a project manager, you know that we work with timelines, right? So that's how our brain is wired. Therefore, it is important to have a deadline. That's extra motivation for us, and our mindset is going to change if we know that we have to be ready. But of course it has to be within reason, right? You're not going to schedule the exam for a week after you started the class and you haven't seen the material before, so it has to be realistic. So but if you do it between 6 to 8 weeks that you are confident that you're going to be able to take the exam, complete the class, and it's going to be good timing for you, then use that as motivation. That's going to help you. It is a lot of work, but if you have that extra motivation, that helps. You know that you're marching towards a deadline. That's how you manage your projects. That's what probably one of the most important aspects that we cover as project managers. We work towards deadlines. So uh, use it as motivation as well. Otherwise, we tend to procrastinate. It's just human nature. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Now, the domains of the exam, there are 5, and they follow the order of a project. And this is the way the questions will be distributed. There's a very large test bank, though. So, in the event that 2 people happen to be at a testing center at one time, it would be highly unlikely that they would even see the same questions or in the same order at all. So your test experience is going to be your own. It's going to be very unique compared to anybody else who might be taking the exam. And PMI is very protective of these questions. Now, when you do your application, this is what we mean about the domains. They want to hear about your project experience from initiating through closing. And if you start to run out of room, take the paragraph form away. This is actually, I saw someone's audit the other day and what they were asking for. And what they wanted is to actually say, okay, put in parentheses right before you say the things you did in initiating, then put PL and then EX and then MC for monitoring and closing or controlling and CL for closing. That way you don't have to spend characters saying even the word and takes up 3 characters and the spaces in between, and you'll see if you haven't yet tried to explain your work experience how challenging that might be. So keep that in mind. Follow the order of the project, and you can use those initials or abbreviations to help you out. Okay.
Great point. All right, recommended study. This is going to take approximately 100 hours of study. There are pre-tests that you're going to have to take. Also, live classes. We're trying to recommend people to take a class with a good instructor. There's several out there. You could also, there are pre-recorded classes that you can take. There are videos that are on demand that you can watch. PMBOK 6th edition, some people have different opinions about this. We recommend you to read the PMBOK 6th edition. That is pretty much, that is the core textbook for this exam. So it is important. Then practice tests, practice exams. You have to get yourself familiarized with the keywords, with the terminology, with the definitions. Formulas are very important. You have to memorize them. You have to work. The only way to achieve that is through repetition, work with them, practice questions, understand the application. And that way you'll be able to work on memorizing the formulas. Then memorizing the processes. Understand, if you're able to understand the workflow, the actual relationship between the 5 process groups, the 10 knowledge areas, and the 49 processes. So whenever you read a question, you're able to pinpoint, oh, this is a planning question and it's related to risk management. You're going to be in great shape for the exam. That takes time. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work to get to that point, but practice makes perfect, and it's a big recommendation that we have for you. So spend some time. There's one page in your pin book that is extremely important, which is page 25, that has actually that 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, and the 49 processes. So that is important for your preparation. And then also a very important aspect, last but not least, you need to understand the role of the project manager. There are several questions that are going to be related to the role of the project manager. You have to understand, are they using a predictive approach, or they're using an adaptive approach? So that changes. There's several keys that are going to be provided to you in the question, pieces of information that will help you to determine what the questions might be from the role of the project manager. So also the type of organization, is it a strong matrix organization, or a weak matrix, or a projectized organization, or a functional organization? So the role of the project manager and the authority changes. So it is important for you to understand that, excuse me, in order to answer the questions correctly.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so just like we recommend study, we also know the reasons that people may not pass the exam. And a lot of times it has to do with everything we said to do. If for any reason, somebody doesn't know the role of the project manager, doesn't really understand the context of a question, it's all situational. So if you think, oh, okay, well, I studied all the formulas, so I know all the answers, that's only part of the challenge, because what's going to happen is, what decision do you make now? Okay, so you solve for the formula, but what does it mean? And what do you do to get your project back on track if the formula says that you're behind schedule or over budget, something like that? So read those questions very carefully. That's another thing that PMI likes to do, is give you too much information in a question, and then you have to figure out what part of that is relevant. And so read very carefully, take your time. Orlando has a great process with his students where he actually practices time management with them, because you could feel very comfortable with the the content and you're doing well on the practice exams, but then you walk into this new environment under pressure. And so Orlando really helps to set expectations for how to pace yourself, what it really feels like when you walk into that exam room. So this is not an exam that you can wing it. You can't say, well, I'm mostly there, maybe I'll get lucky. That's a very humbling experience to go through. And unfortunately, sometimes we do have people who come to us afterward and say, okay, now I'm going to break down and actually go to your class, because that wasn't what I thought it would be like. So it can be very tough. Um, the PMBOK guide is part of it, but there's content that goes beyond the PMBOK guide. Some areas in quality and motivational theory for resources. There's a lot that the PMBOK doesn't cover. And scenarios are hard to find in the PMBOK guide. Things like the critical path method. You'll see one little chart and that's it. But like Orlando said, it's all about repetition
Yes.
and practice. And you do need to do that, whether it's on your own or with a group. That's going to be key for your success. Okay. Whoops, I think I skipped one. There you go.
Yes. So get into that exam day. Way before that, try to make sure that you're familiarized with the location of the testing center. The second bullet point is very important. If you're a morning person, don't take the exam late. They have to usually 2 shifts. So if you're a morning person, take it early, the first shift, and then which is usually at 8:30 in the morning. But if you're not a morning person, for example, I'm not a morning person. Um, the 12:30 shift is better, so you try to play to your strength, basically. Um, Before the exam, the day before the exam, don't be cramming the content. That's not the time to do that. That it's too late.
Yeah.
So rest. If you enjoy exercising, go and exercise, or try to do the stuff that you enjoy. So it's about relaxing so you can execute on exam day. So that day you're going to relax. The day before, that's what high performance athletes do. The day before, they're not training. Their training is already done. That day, the day before, they're resting, they're relaxing, they are ready, but they are relaxed. They're getting to that. Um, if there's an important game or competition the day after, then they're going to be relaxing the day before. They're going to be doing the stuff that they enjoy to do. So then they can go and perform on their big day. So the same principle applies here for you. And try to, as much as possible, to study in an environment as similar to the exam setting. By that I mean there might be some distractions, so try to deal with that. That's why the simulators are important, because they're going to get you. They're very familiar, pretty much the same colors, or at least very similar to the ones that you're going to see in the actual exam. So get familiarized with that. It is important so you get your routine, and then when exam day comes, you're just going to execute. Um, in You're going to execute, and you're going to the distractions are not going to affect you. You're just going to get into that zone and execute what you're with answering your questions, right? So it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah. All right. Now, on exam day, you'll bring your forms of ID and the authorization letter from PMI. Everything goes in a locker. So if you do have any special need for accommodation like medication, or you're not able to sit for too long medically, make sure they know that. Have that communication with the testing center ahead of time, because they do have accommodations. It's just better to have the discussion in advance. And because once you start your exam, that timer keeps going. You don't want to have that conversation while the exam clock is going. So you can't access your locker until the exam is over, but you can leave the exam room if you need to take a break. And you might want to go ahead and just plan on taking a break, because 4 hours is a really long time to sit in one place. I know I took a break during my exam. Orlando said that he did too. There
Yeah.
is plenty of time to do that. The exam timer does keep going, but that's all right. It is a 4-hour exam, but you don't need every minute of that. At least you shouldn't if you've prepared well. I hear closer to 3.5 hours, or 3 hours and 45. There is time for a break. And if you think about how uncomfortable you might be after sitting for 4 hours, it might be better to get up, walk around, take a deep breath, get a drink of water, and come back refreshed. So that's on exam day.
Yes. So
Okay.
when you go to a testing center, they're going to provide you with a calculator, which is a physical calculator, and you're also going to have the chance to use the calculator that comes with Microsoft Windows. And you're able to use that as well. They're going to give you, well, before they used to give you sheets of paper. Now they don't do that anymore. It's more this laminated paper with markers that you're going to be able to use so you can write and do your brain dump, which is something that we recommend you to do. You can write your formulas and any other piece of information that might be useful for you on exam day. So we'll strongly recommend you to do that. But it's going to be a little bit different. It's more of a marker with this laminated paper that you have to be careful with that as well, not to erase it. But you'll have something to write on, and you will also have a calculator for some of the questions that you might need to use to apply the formulas. So.
Mhm. And something else I didn't mention is when you walk in with your ID and your letter, the experience you are going to go through is something that you want to be prepared for. And it's kind of like going to the airport, going through security at the airport. So do prepare for that. It's nothing personal. They just really want to keep the integrity of this exam very high. And so they're going to make sure that you don't bring anything in with you. I know I've had to turn my pockets out, and if you're wearing pants, they have you just pull up the pant leg, show your sock and the sole of your shoe under your shoe. They just want to make sure that you don't have any formulas with you, and that's part of the process. They may even take a thumbprint. I think at Pearson VUE there may be a biometric part of it, just in case there ever becomes any question of who that was taking that exam. They'll have the biometric test as well with the thumbprint. So when you do get in there, and Orlando mentioned writing the formulas down, this is the order that it happens. So this has to come from your head. You can't bring those formulas into the room, unfortunately. Everything has to be in your head. So the first, I think it's about 12 minutes or so, there'll be a tutorial that just explains how to navigate the exam, when to or how to skip a question or mark a question to come back to it, and how to mark your answer. It's just a little tutorial. You can't write anything when that's happening. It's on top of the 4 hours. That's a good
Yes.
question in the chat. Yeah, this does not count as exam time. This is strictly learning how to navigate the computer. Then you start the exam. It'll ask you twice if you're sure. And when you say, yes, I'm sure, I'm going to start the exam now, you'll see a little clock on the exam, on the, the computer. That is when you're allowed to start writing your formulas and your notes. That's the brain dump
Yeah.
time. If you've ever heard, oh, do it during the tutorial, you're probably speaking to somebody who took their exam more than a year ago. They did make this change where they said, that's not really in the spirit of the exam. You have to start the 4 hours, then you can do the brain dump, but it's worth it. You
It's
should
still worth it,
definitely do
yes.
it. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So during the exam, the exam starts 4 hours. Then you have 200 multiple choice questions. So if you do the math, it's going to give you 72 seconds per question. And this ties up to what Barb was mentioning before that we do with our students. Time management is very important because you might think it's 4 hours, I have plenty of time, I can read carefully. You have to manage your time wisely. It takes, you have to dedicate some time to prepare for that and manage your time so the clock is your friend and not your enemy. Each of the questions has 4 answers and only one is going to be the correct answer. Only 175 questions are going to count towards your score. There are 25 random questions that do not count, but you have to think of 200 questions. You have to answer all the 200 questions because there's not going to be an indication in the exam of which one of those is random. It's a random question that will not count. You're not going to know which one is it. You have to answer all of them. So take this with a grain of salt. This is how it's evaluated, but you have to get ready for 200 questions and you have to answer all of the 200 questions. You can cycle through the questions repeatedly. You can come back, mark them for review. You can skip them and then come back later, but you have to answer all of them. Make sure that if you mark some questions for review, which goes back again to time management, you have to remember, you got to go back to those questions, answer them, and then make sure that you don't leave any questions unanswered before you submit your results or your exam. Um, once you go through your review, you answer everything, then you're gonna click the submit button, then send it, and right away you're gonna get the results, whether you passed or you did, or you didn't. So you're gonna get it right away, which is a good thing. At least you won't have to wait for those results.
Right.
They're gonna tell you right away.
Yeah. And the question in the chat, do you find reading the key question first, followed by the multiple choices, then reading the entire question again to be effective? And I would say I actually just look at the answers first to put in my head, is this going to be a number that they're looking for? Is it a process group that they're looking for? So I would look at the answers first, and this is just my style. It's not necessarily right or wrong, but I figure that that's helpful. Then I look at the question once, and then what are they really asking? Because you're going to have to dig and say, okay, there's a lot of extra information here. What is it that they're asking? It's almost like they'll tell an entire story over here, and then the question is over here, over there.
Yes.
And so they do that sometimes. And so that's what I recommend. I don't know, Orlando, what do you think about that?
It is very similar to your approach. Yeah, read the answers first so you know which ones, what is it that they're looking for. Is it a number? Is it a specific process? What is it they're looking for? Then, yeah, then go back and try to identify what is it that they're asking you specifically. Because like Barb said, there's a lot of, they're notorious for that. They put a lot of extra information that is non-relevant. It's just to confuse you. It's just there to confuse you and to make sure that you know the scenarios and what they're trying to ask you. So you have to identify the question. But so pretty much I'm in agreement with Barb, and that way you're going to have a better chance of knowing which one is the right answer. The only thing that I will add to that is, well, a couple of things. The first one is, remember that you have, in average, you're going to have 72 seconds to do that. So it takes a lot of practice. It takes practice. So you have to manage your time wisely. And the second one is, if you're able to identify which section of the question is the real question that they're asking you, if you know you're in which process group and which knowledge area, you're going to be in better shape to identify that answer. So, but again, that also takes a lot of practice to get there. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of practice, but yeah, I will start by definitely reading the answers first, then identify the question, and then focusing on try to answer the right choice.
Great. Now, you do submit everything at once. So you will go back, make sure you answered everything. There's never a reason to leave a blank answer. There's no negative scoring. So even if you have to narrow it down and then make your best guess, it's worthwhile to do that. And when you submit everything at once, you're going to find out then and there how you did. And there'll be a short survey about the test environment. And when the survey is complete, your results will be ready. And so we're hoping that you see congratulations as the first word on the screen. And then they will give you a temporary form that they sign and stamp. Although I call it temporary, I know I'm keeping mine forever. And then you get your certificate, your official certificate from PMI will be ready almost immediately in digital form. And then, so that's nice. You'll want to share that all over LinkedIn and with your colleagues, because that'll be a very proud moment. It's a lot of work and something to be celebrated when you pass the exam.
Absolutely. But after you get your certification, you have to work on keeping that certification because you work so hard that you don't want to let it lapse. Uh, so in order to do that, you have to collect what they call professional development units, which we know as PDUs. and you have to collect this professional development units, a total of 60. So that's basically in average 20 per year within 3 years. That's the renewal cycle that that PMI has established for for the PMP certification. So there's several ways that you can do that. You working as a project manager, that you're going to get some PDUs for that. If you watch webinars from projectmanagement.com, for example, that counts towards your PDUs. If you write an article on project management, that counts towards your PDUs. If you take a training, let's say a Six Sigma training or training for PMI ACP, that training counts towards your PDUs. So there's several ways of collecting these PDUs. You'll have to make a payment. I don't recall exactly what the fee is for the renewal, but you'll have to pay for that. And then it's very easy for you to submit the PDUs. You just gotta go to pmi.org, log in with your username and password, and then you'll have a section that is called dashboard, and that's how you can. There's going to be a section in there that will allow you to submit PDUs for your credentials. So very simple, but it's important to keep it. Don't let it lapse. You work so hard that you don't want to ever let that lapse.
No, definitely not. You want to hang on to that. Now, Orlando, I know that you put some time into this slide. So if you want to take this one as well, and I can do the last one. And just to explain, and you can do whatever approach you think works for you as far as exam prep. Orlando and I would like to take a moment and share our approach that we take with our students, and tell you what we have to offer. And then we want to do a Q&A. And of course, we're using the chat here as well. So please feel free to use the chat and ask us your questions. And Orlando, if you want to take this, and I'll kind of monitor the chat.
Perfect. Thank you, Barb.
Okay.
So
Sure.
we offer a training. We have gone through several lessons learned, and we have been able to put together a training that it's a strategy that has basically four prongs that will allow you to be successful. And we have taken into consideration several things. So the first one, as you remember at the beginning of the session, we were talking about the application process. So we work one-on-one with every single one of our students to make sure that they're able to fill out the application correctly. We do a pre-audit. We provide them with documentation with examples on how to fill out the experience section. So most of those questions that Michelle had about the application, we address that because there is a way to present the information the most efficient way. We have been able to gather lessons learned from from our own experience and other students. So we pretty much success rate right now is 96, 98% for applications that have not been audited. We use keywords. We have developed we have enough information that will help you, and we're going to review your application before we consider that it's ready to be submitted. So that's one thing that we do at the very beginning of the process. Then we work on the actual training. We have here on site, but we also do that's customized. Most of the training that we do is like these sessions is live online through the Zoom platform. So we get together at a specific time during the day. It's usually after hours, after working hours. So we go and cover the entire content, and we're able to cover the entire content, and we're able to go over questions that you might have, and basically cover the different gaps that on the information that you need to know for the exam that is not covered by the pinbook. On top of that, we give you access to, this is what we consider the most important aspect of your preparation, the simulators. And we give you access to two different simulators, one with Skillsoft, which has over 700 questions that are written by certified PMPs, uh, well-written questions, high quality, very similar to the ones that you're going to be facing in your actual PMP exam. And also you get access to another simulator from PM Training, um, that has over 1,500 questions that also are really good questions that are going to help you to get exposed to those different angles that you're going to be tested on your exam day. So this is a very important aspect. This is going to show you, this is going to present the real picture. The simulators, the PM Training one has a section that shows you your scores, your percentages, and ideally, when you're ready, how do you know if you're ready for the exam? The simulator is going to answer that question for you. If you start consistently scoring more than 75%, 80% on all the process groups and knowledge areas, then you're ready. If you're not, then you have to work a little bit more. So the simulator is very important, and we give you access to 2 different simulators. And last but not least, we also give you access on top of the live um, on-site or live online classes. We also give you access to on-demand videos from Skillsoft that are also going to help you to cover the entire content. These videos are actually recorded by a great project manager that you have the chance to be talking to her right now. And they're great videos. They use animations. They use a lot of resources that are going to help you to understand really complex terminology that you read in the pin book. Barb and the Skillsoft team, they do a great job in explaining that in a way that it makes it easier for you to understand. So the combination of these 4 aspects is what makes our system a good option for training. We have had several great results, people that have gotten certified going through the process, and we are able to, we have the evidence this works, and if you follow our guidelines, you're going to become a PMP. We're not promising that it's going to be from one day to another. This, of course, requires, like we said at the beginning, you have to put in the time, you have to follow the guidelines and study, but we're going to be here to help you. It is a very hands-on approach that we have with all of our students, and we'll be more than happy to have you in our program. We cover all the content, and you don't need to go outside of the materials that we provide. You don't need to use any additional titles for this class.
Right. And there was a question in the chat, a good question about where does the 35 contact hour, where does that come from in this 4-pronged approach? And really, the Skillsoft platform provides a certificate of completion, but Orlando's live training is put together with it, because you're going to see when you need 100 hours of study to prepare for an exam, or what did we say, 80 to 100, it's really nice for that to be guided. And so some of it is on the Skillsoft platform, 35 of it is there. And then you've got the other content from Orlando's live. And this does say on-site, but Orlando does do virtual as well, like he said,
Yeah.
using Zoom just like this.
So
So
you're
yeah.
gonna get more than that. So that's a great question in here. So normally we do for the live online, we do 24 hours in 6 weeks, so which is 4 weeks, 4 hours per week. So you're gonna get 35 from the videos from the Skillsoft platform, plus 24 of the live online sessions. So you're gonna get uh, if you do the math, you're going to get 59 hours, almost 60 hours total on top compared to the 35 that are required by PMI. So you get way much more than just the 35 hours.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive. And that deeper dive from the live learning is really nice. So the Skillsoft platform, think of that as the foundation. It gives you every process, but then the preparation that Orlando does adds all of the exercise practice and the deep dives into the testable content. So together, it's a pretty successful plan for strategy for the exam.
And to add to what Barb just mentioned, the way we do it is we encourage our students to join to the class a week or two before the first live session. Once you join, we give you access to the videos. Then you can start working. The videos are on demand. You can access the videos at any time. They're going to be there for you, so you can watch it at your availability. But that way, you build your foundation. And if you're able to come to the first class uh, after you have covered the initial content, then you're going to be in better shape. So what we do with the live sessions is pretty much fill your knowledge gaps, and you can ask more specific questions. And then with the videos, you continue doing that. You continue to prepare your classes before the next live session, and that way you're going to get more out of the live sessions than just coming for the first time and covering the material for the first time. So there's a sequence to that we recommend, and people that have done it that way, they have been successful in their exam. And of course, you got to take practice questions, and of course, you got to read the pin book. But if you follow that cadence, results we can pretty much guarantee that you're going to pass the exam. But if you put in the time, of course.
Yeah, and so this is just a little bit more about the Skillsoft platform and the contact hours and the fact that Skillsoft is a registered education provider with PMI, so you do get the certificate of completion that's necessary for your application, and then the success is that combination really with a live learning that makes all the difference. So. Um, do you have any questions? And we're taking questions in the chat. If you have just watched us on replay, we hope you'll reach out to us, and there'll be contact information paired with this video. So I'm going to stop the recorder now, and then we'll take questions from the live group. Thanks so much for attending.